This series of lessons focuses on intertextuality in advertising, and that could be print advertising or it could be the digital advertising that you see broadcasted on television. So, our objectives are simply to identify how the meaning of text varies with form, context, and interpretation. And all of that will be broken down shortly. It is to analyze the intertextuality in advertising, and I'm also going to review intertextuality just in case we forgot some important parts of it. So again, intertextuality comes from these three areas of exploration in IB. So we have readers, writers, texts, which is the way to read text critically. It's to look at text stylistically, and it's also designed to look at text thematically. Our second area of exploration that we look at when we are looking at text is time and space. So that just simply means we read text to understand how community, culture, and history change over time. And so what we're looking at right now is this third and most important piece to this web of area of explorations known as intertextuality. So think of this as the connections and relationships that exist among texts. So in reviewing intertextuality, what it is again, it is that basically the premise that most of the texts that we read contain relationships or connections to other text. And where can it be seen? So basically, and this is kind of broad question, but in anything that is considered a text. And I'm going to review again what a text constitutes. How are texts interpreted? All right, all the time we always use the stylistic techniques. And the four that apply well to intertextuality are appropriation, parody, allusion, and pastiche to guide your understanding of the text. And then lastly, why is it important? So it emphasizes that there is a connection between time and space, genre, and also themes among text. All right, so text, again, it's not just a book that you open or an article that you read, right? Our understanding of text encompasses art too. It encompasses, this week we're going to look at advertising. This is actually coming from an ad that Adidas put out, this image that we're going to be looking at shortly. It also is evident in the music that we hear. There is text in music, anything that is open to interpretation. And then film as well too, which we'll be getting into in the weeks to come. So all of this constitutes text. All right, so advertising as text. So here we have an ad that comes from Samsung. If you look at the very bottom, it shows the Samsung, right? And it's a little blurry, but it says for self-portraits, not selfies. All right. And so if you look closely at this, it is actually what's called an appropriation that is coming from an older text from this Vincent van Gogh. This is a self-portrait of Vincent van Gogh. And then if you recognize the image to the right, this is Frida Kahlo. Okay, so these have been what's called appropriated, right? They've been kind of reimagined into this ad that we see here for Samsung. All right, so again, this is why advertising is considered text. It does contain a message. All ads contain message, be it print or what we see on the television or on YouTube. YouTube has ads too. So the visual ads is what I'm referring to there. Ads contain stories, and we'll see that today with characters, setting, and maybe a plot, but characters and setting for sure. So ads can also be interpreted and analyzed. And ads, of course, everything contains style. If it's text, it's going to contain some kind of stylistic technique to it. And the two that apply to advertising, and these are the only two that you need to be concerned with, is allusion, because an allusion is some reference to the past, and then appropriation. Again, appropriation just means this idea of being reimagined. As you can see here, these two images have been reimagined into this Samsung ad. All right, so intertextuality in advertising. All right, so it is an integral part of in the advertising of texts. So it's two or more of the linguistic, visual, and oral audio texts complement each other for better understanding of the message by the reader. And we'll see what that looks like. Advertisements that use intertextuality have a bigger impact on the consumer. So basically, like those ads that you see during Super Bowl, we're going to take a look at those later on this week. Those have such a big impact because they have layers of images and ideas and messages going on. So as a reader, right, whenever you look at something, you're considered a reader, and it doesn't necessarily have to be text. You have to understand the relevant social, cultural, or advertising context. So that's like the background. Okay, and that's why we might struggle with this a little bit, because that background is unfamiliar or remote or distant to us, and we can't immediately connect with it unless we look it up, unless we go online and we search up, what this image is about and when it was produced and so forth. And lastly, it makes you feel like you belong to a certain group of people, and thus the relationship with a brand that is advertised is enhanced. So that's advertising is intended to draw you in, right? So it can appeal to you as a reader, and eventually the people that put out the ad want you to buy their product. Like, that's the goal of advertising. All right, so in looking at what I want you to look at this week, there's an ad. So we're going to look at this ad first, and you might have to view it a few times. So I have this ad that Adidas did. It aired in 2017, so about 3 years ago, on during the Grammy show that is aired. I think that's around February. So the title of this ad is very important. It's called Adidas Original, and then the idea behind that, the subtitle is Original is Never Finished. So this is kind of a nice concept to understand in terms of intertextuality, because things are just kind of reimagined, and there's kind of no such thing as original anymore, because everything that we see is kind of either something from the past, right? It's an illusion, it's an appropriation, it's a patchwork, a pastiche. So this idea of originality, according to Adidas, it's never finished. And we'll see. I'm just going to play this. And again, like I said, you'll have to replay it for the purpose of the assignment. But I do want to point out some things that are going on an intertextual level. So right now we're just going to view.
What I have to do and saw it through
without exemption.
I planned each charted course,
Each careful step.
along the byway, and more, much more than this. I did it
my way.
Yes, there were times, I'm sure you do, when I bit off more than I could chew. But I couldn't recall when the day was down. I hate to go.
All right. So interesting commercial there, right? You saw all kinds of faces. You saw people from the music world. If you're familiar with Snoop Dogg, he was in there and some other music names in music. You saw sports figures, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Brandon Ingram was there. And then you also saw some art being appropriated and music. So let's try to make sense of this because, like I said, you will have to maybe do a little bit more reading into some of this text that you see. Might be familiar, unfamiliar to you. And if it's unfamiliar, then we need to be looking at the context of it, looking things up. So this is an analysis of an original's never finished. Okay, so this video is about what you just saw. I'm gonna play it. It's really short and it kind of explains like some things that are going on.
We're made to believe that to be original, you have to be first, that nothing you do can have been done before. As the brand with original in its name, we decided to prove that what's been done before can be done again with everything we did. Starting with the most overdone track. And more, much more than this. I did it mine. And doing it like never before. Yes, there were times, I'm sure you do, when I bit off more than I could chew. An anthem created with a new generation of musicians. Every sound reappropriated from what came before. Joining it, an original film made with nothing original. Every scene an ode to the past and what it could become. Then, we prepared the world for a new take on our message. And on music's biggest night, we owned not only the big screen, but the second screen. 3 more music videos during the award show, remixed until they were new again. One of the greatest of them all, Dog Sinatra. In pocket with the rocket, I cock it, I got you. Yo, Frank Sinatra, always do it my way. The remixes took on a life of their own, making Adidas Originals the most talked about brand on Grammys night, while the anthem ignited social media. Supported by a hack of Instagram Live and Snapchat takeovers, culminating in over 500 pieces of unique content. Even now, the campaign continues its assault on originality, hitting more than 149 countries, bolstered by media across every touch point.
Another looming issue for the swoosh is global number 2 Adidas. Lifestyle products up 45%.
Proving that even if it's all been done before, original can be done again.
All right, so highlights from this 2-minute analysis that we saw, just to recap. Um, and most of these bullet points come directly from what we just saw. So the narrator articulated that what's been done before can be done again. All right, so this idea of original is never finished also applies to intertextuality. We have a text, but it's also always a reworking or a remaking of something that's been done before. So Frank Sinatra's My Way has been reappropriated. There's that fancy stylistic technique, appropriation, in this video as the anthem, right? That's the song that you hear repeatedly in the background. And it's created by a new generation of musicians that you just saw in this analysis. Now, this is a direct bullet point coming from the narration. So every scene has been reappropriated from what came before. And that's the important idea of appropriation that applies here on a stylistic level. And then every scene is an ode to the past. So anytime you think of the past, coming from the past, that's your illusion right there. So your 2 A words, illusion and appropriation, are going to tie in to everything that you see this week. That's all you have to be concerned with on a stylistic level. All right, and global appeal. As IB learners, we are global thinkers, and this advertisement has a global appeal to it. So lastly, It made the statement, original can be done again. And that's what intertextuality is. So this advertisement from Adidas captures this idea of intertextuality nicely, and it embeds intertextuality. So that's what I want to look at right now. I want to just review this video, and like I said, you might have to replay it a couple times to see this and to figure out how you're going to respond. So in this video, if you play it, you will see this image, and it is The Birth of Venus by Sandro Botticelli in 1485, which if you are familiar with time periods, you'll know that that was the Italian and European Renaissance. So it represents a rebirth of civilization during the Renaissance. Okay, so I had no idea what this art represented because I haven't studied the Renaissance, right, in depth and detail like this. Just reading a little bit in a textbook doesn't do anything for me, right? But what does this art represent? So you have to look up information about what you see, right? I've given you a title. If you just Google search The Birth of Venus, Sandro Botticelli, it's going to give you more information as far as analysis of this image. So what it's been reimagined to is this image that you see here on the right. And I just call this the birth of something new. As you can see, it has the same number of humans, the four, right, human beings, and it kind of what you see, the image is a modern interpretation of today. Okay, and it's going along with Adidas's slogan, as originals never finished. Okay, so that is an example right there of appropriation. Another example is you saw this image, which again comes from the Renaissance, the Vitruvian Man by Leonardo da Vinci, kind of around the same time as The Birth of Venus, the late 1400s. So this work of art conveys the idea of perfection and humanity. All right, so the idea that proportions are equal and so forth. And then we have here the appropriated version, this reimagined scene with Kendall Jenner that you see here. Again, depicting the idea of original is never finished. All right, and a couple more things that we see. We hear, again, music is considered text because the song lyrics convey a meaning and a message. So Frank Sinatra's My Way. And then we see that Snoop Dogg and other artists are singing the reimagined song My Way that came out initially by Frank Sinatra. So that is also an example of intertextuality. If you want to look at more art, the original, obviously, the Statue of Liberty is depicted as such. Okay, but art is a little bit, this kind of art is a little bit more difficult to do because it's really difficult to look up information about the context of this image. The other ones that I showed you during the Renaissance, there have been books, articles, all kinds of information put out to explain those. All right, so tips for understanding the text that I want you, right? We're supposed to be making connections with the text here. So if you have no idea what this text is, right? At least I've given you like a title, year. It's always important to do a Google search by the title of the text to find out more information. Find a source that analyzes the context. So something that looks at most of these sources online do, taking into account the history, the setting, the year, the message, meaning. All of that is part of context. So take notes. Okay, notes are going to help you understand things. They're going to help you write, and they're going to enable you to get a better understanding of the text that you are responding to. Jot down 3 to 5 important ideas, including the message or idea of the text. All right, so those are just some tips there. And be mindful of the stylistic techniques. And I just mentioned this week, only be concerned with appropriation and allusion. The other two don't really apply to the types of ads that we're going to see. So appropriation and illusion are the ones to be mindful of. All right, and so I am going to get into the assignment for today, which is, so you might want to watch the Adidas My Way ad again. There's the analysis. If you want to read more on this ad, there is an actual text. WTF does this commercial mean? I mean, that's what it's called. So you can read more about different segments of this commercial. And it explains everything, including this Birth of Venus, the Sandro Botticelli artwork. All right. And there's another one, using the past to inspire the future. So you can read this too. It is about the commercial or about the ad that you are watching. All right. So you are responding. This is what you're doing. You are selecting two texts in this Adidas ad, and you are explaining the relationship or connection. All right. Easier said than done, right? Again, a response is a response, and I want these to be as creative as possible, because sometimes creativity kind of gets your writer's block going. I know it does for me. All right. So all kinds of ways that you can respond here. If you're into poetry, poems are good. You can even do captions if you want, right? I'm asking you to do two. And if you do captions that, let's go back, into that you're talking about the context, message, and techniques, I'm perfectly okay with that. All right, so again, if you submitted your IB Learner portfolio, I will send that back to you with a grade. So you will unsubmit that, and you will continue your responses on that document. Like I said, this document has been set up for years 1 and 2. You're not just doing this right now, but it's going to carry over into next year. We are looking at the section of intertextuality, and if you click on the blue link, it is going to take you directly to that section. So intertextuality in advertising. I'm going to go there, and there it is right there. All right, so what I have done is I'm like, okay, I'm talking about the context, the message, and the techniques. All right, so I have highlighted those in my response. And if you look, like, stylistically, I am talking about appropriation here. And I don't talk about this, like, if you mention it in one area of your response, it's fine, like what I'm asking you to do. So the context, again, you're looking at historical, information about the text. So I've chosen to respond to the Vitruvian Man and this reimagined scene with Kylie Jenner. This is how these are the two texts that I'm talking about. And I am doing a journal entry from a psychiatrist's perspective. All right. So what a psychiatrist thinks, you can read that. It's as if the psychiatrist is talking. Okay, so again, the yellow is the message. So what message could this be sending? And I looked at this, and so we're talking about body image here, obviously. That's what the Vitruvian Man does, perfect proportion. That's what I'm talking about here in my response. All right, so it doesn't have to be as long as this. I just kind of got inspired creatively here. And again, it can be in any format. So if you have any other specific questions, I am going to include this slideshow in your Google Classroom. You can look at it as far as a reference.